Hi guys, in the past I've done a series of videos based around setting up a Star Wars role-playing campaign. I went through selecting which game system to use, whether you wanted to use the old West End Games D6 system, or whether you wanted to use Age of the Empire, Age of Rebellion, the Fantasy Flight games. I even mentioned the D20 based Wizard of the Coast Star Wars game, which was basically Dungeons & Dragons in space. I also went through selecting which era, whether you wanted to play in the Old Republic era of the old computer games, Knights of the Old Republic, or whether you wanted to play through the Clone Wars, Galactic Civil War, into the sequel campaigns. And finally I went through what kind of campaign you wanted to run, whether you wanted to have your characters as smugglers and pirates, whether you wanted to be rebel agents, whether you wanted to be separatists, imperial agents, etc, etc. Now, most recently, I've started up yet another Star Wars campaign. I'm actually running 3 campaigns at the same time. And I thought it might be handy to go over the setup of this 3rd campaign, because I think I broke a lot of my own rules. So maybe it'll be useful to you, maybe it won't. Maybe I'm just talking to a camera. We shall see. Now, as I mentioned, I'm running 3 campaigns at the moment. The first one I'm running was the Kids campaign. Now, I started that off because the children of my original gaming group wanted role-playing games. They've been brought up in houses where we've got shelves full of role-playing games and older siblings who are going out to play them, and they wanted to play as well. Now, they're sort of 12, 13, 14 years old. They really wanted to play, so me and one of the other parents set up a group for them. Friday nights we'll go out and play a bit of Dungeons & Dragons, and I decided to run Star Wars, which the kids seem really excited about because they're kids and they're into Star Wars. As am I. Now, the second campaign I set up is because my gaming group, we lost a couple of the Games Masters. The long-term Game Master had been running Dungeons & Dragons for years, and a guy had come back to the group fairly recently and was running Dungeons & Dragons and some Star Trek. Now, that had made up 99% of what we were playing, because I'd retired an old campaign, I was taking a bit of a break from Games Mastering while I did other things, I was enjoying being a player for a while, but without any Games Masters in the group, we just didn't have a reason for meeting up. So I stepped up, and I know the Star Wars system fantastically well, so that was pretty much a said. I was going to run that, and I decided to pick up an off-the-shelf campaign, one made up for the D20 system, and start running characters through that. And we've been playing that for about 6 months now. We're up to adventure 4 or 5 out of the 12, I believe it is. And that's going really well. But that doesn't require a lot of work for me because Wizard of the Coast made that adventure, published it, and they did all the hard grunt work for me. Now, the 3rd campaign I'm running is again for the kids. You see, the Friday night game was a bit erratic in its scheduling. Although it's still ongoing, it doesn't meet every week. Parents have other commitments, some of the kids have other commitments, and in fact over the summer we had to take a break of 10 weeks when we couldn't play at all. Which I know some of the kids didn't like. I didn't like doing that to them. So I decided to go round to my local community centre. I spoke to the organiser there, and very nicely they put aside a room there that we can use on a Wednesday night for a couple of hours. A nice big table, that's all we need, and I run a game for the kids on our Wednesday night. Now, I started off with Dungeons & Dragons because it was the obvious game. Everybody knew that. The kids could invite their friends. Oh, we're going to play Dungeons & Dragons on a Wednesday night. And they would turn up and they'd know what to expect. Everybody knows Dungeons & Dragons. But the thing is, my reputation as somebody who likes Star Wars and a long-term Star Wars GM got out to the kids. My son leaked it, surprise, surprise. And the kids started asking, well, when are we going to play Star Wars? When are we going to play Star Wars? So a few weeks ago, I started to run the game for them. But while the system's easy to choose, because I really know the Star Wars D6 system, the background and everything else wasn't so straightforward. Now, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Now, in my series of videos on the subject, I went through all the details of selecting the era and selecting what type of campaign you wanted. But with the kids, I didn't feel I could do that. I didn't want to be the one coming down and saying, right, you are playing in the Rebellion era, you are rebel agents. I wanted to give them the choice of things. So, while we had to have a session of character creation, I didn't want to spend an entire evening just sat with character sheets and discussing what the campaign was going to be about. So, we split the evening. The first hour was going to be character creation, and I would question them on when they wanted to play, what kind of characters they wanted to be. And the second hour would actually start having an introductory session. But how do you write an introductory session without having any knowledge of what the setting is, what the characters are going to be like, what they're going to be doing? So I was left with that. Now, because of the way I was running this, I really couldn't do much preparation work at all. I really couldn't write a complex adventure which would fit into any background, whether they were separatists, rebels, whether they were back in history, whether they're in the future, whether they were fighting the Empire or the First Order or the Republic. While the conflicts were there, it was possible to write something generic, but I didn't even know which side they'd be on, or if they were going to be on any side, if they were going to be independent sort of smugglers and pirates. So I wrote a glorified encounter, a short adventure, which was basically going to be them sneaking into a customs depot to steal an impounded shuttle, which was going to be loaded with medical supplies. Now, I was leaving it so generic that if they were rebels, they'd be sneaking into an Imperial depot on a planet to steal an impounded rebel ship. If they were scum and villainy, then a Hutt would be hiring them to steal something he was smuggling onto the planet, which was going to be medical supplies, from an Imperial depot or a Republic depot or whatever time period it was. If they were separatists, they'd be stealing it from a Republic depot, and so on and so forth. I just left it so generic. I wrote down a few names, so the name of a general for the rebellion, the name of a Nemoidian commander for the separatists, the name of a Hutt. And I chose a planet which was generic and nobody really knew anything about. And that was the background I wrote for it. So we get to the night of the first game session, and the first question I put to the kids is what time period they want to play in. And they've been really good about this, and they discussed it beforehand, and they decided they wanted to play during the Galactic Civil War. So we closed that down a bit to being directly after A New Hope. That's when they wanted to play between New Hope in the lead up to Empire Strikes Back, which is absolutely fantastic. Because while I prefer playing in the Rise of Rebellion period between episodes 3 and 4, so you're basically in an uncharted territory, the Rebel series kind of lays things down, but you've got the rest of the Empire and the rest of the galaxy where you don't know. The Empire's rising to power, there's rebel groups around, but there's no formal rebellion yet. And that's a great time period. But they'd chosen after that, which is an equally exciting period, because the Death Star's just been blown up. Lots of planets are realizing that the Empire's not as strong as it was, and they can foment rebellion. And that's really cool. The kids can play in. Now, 3 of the kids had decided that they wanted to be independent, but joining the rebellion at some point. And the 4th kid had decided that he doesn't want to be part of the rebellion, but he'll work for the highest bidder. So he'll be going along with the group. So everything was really aligning quite well. I know where they're starting. They're starting as pirates and smugglers and scum and villainy, and they're working towards joining the Rebel Alliance. So I've got the basis for a campaign mapped out already. Now, we sat down to start creating characters. So I explained to them that in the D6 system, that basically all the characters make one normal person, because it's impossible for a single character in the D6 system to have all the skills. They'll specialize in some area or another. And if you don't do that and you try and create a generic character, somebody's going to be better than you because they can specialize. And I explained that since it's a Star Wars, they're going to need a pilot. They're probably going to want somebody to do all the talking for them, and they're going to need somebody to do a lot of the fighting, to take a lot of the damage for them. And although there were 4 of them, I only laid out that 3 of them had to be defined. The 4th person could decide. Now, my son decided to be the pilot. He had a character in the kids campaign that he wants to keep playing. I wouldn't let him use the same character, but he's basically created a clone of it, even down to the name. Now, it's a pilot. He goes by the title of Doctor, but has no medical training at all. He just likes using that title and acting out as the mad scientist. So my son's got a character, the pilot, who acts like a mad scientist. Now, the second player had already chosen a background and a species. He wanted to play as a Quarren, one of the aquatic species that shares the world with the Mon Calamari, but they feel a bit downtrodden because the Mon Calamari are the famous ones with the capital ships and all that, and they just work in the mines. Now, he wanted to play as a separatist agitator, somebody who'd left his home world and gone to work for the Confederacy during the Clone Wars. So he was going to be a bit of an older character who'd seen the Confederacy fall apart after it had been beaten in the Clone Wars. Now, he doesn't like the Empire because the Empire is basically the old Republic under a new name, and he doesn't like the rebellion because they are the alliance to restore the Republic. So he's the one who doesn't want to join the rebellion but will work for the highest bidder. So we made up that character, and he is the face man of the group. He's the best person at talking to people and conning people and all that. The third player decided that he wanted to play an ex-stormtrooper, so selecting human as his species, we gave him combat skills, and he's the fighter of the group. So we've got the pilot, we've got the face, and we've got the fighter. But who was the fourth character going to be? Now, our fourth player decided to play a hammerhead, and they naturally have a very high knowledge skill, 5 dice, far above the human normal of 4 dice. And he chose to capitalize on that. He is the person who's most knowledgeable about everything. He can work things out for them. And because he's a hammerhead, he likes ecology. He decided that he comes from a small farm that he's set up on this planet. He's got some gardens around it. But he doesn't like the way the Empire's polluting his homeworld and wants to join the rebellion. So we've got the 4 players ready. And with that, we jump straight into the play. Because they've decided to be scum and villainy, I had them hired by Hutt. Garala the Hutt calls them. He's had a shuttle impounded by the Empire. Can they free it from the impound and meet him at coordinates in space to transfer the cargo? They set off, they travel across the city to the impound, break in. By one of them, the Separatist agitator sets himself up as a sniper, shooting down, and the others sneak in through the sewers. They sneak in, they take out the Imperial commanding the base, they fight with some stormtroopers who are manning an anti-aircraft gun, they break the security locks on the shuttle, and they steal it. And that was us out of time. There wasn't enough time to do much. They had a quick fight, they had some sneaking, they had some discussions and trying to get more money out of the Hutt at the start. A nice little start to the campaign. And then it gives me a week, now I know the background, to prepare more. Now, with my game system chosen, my characters created and chosen what kind of lifestyle they're going to have, the time period, the campaign mapped out, I've got a week to prepare a full adventure. And what I did was I set up that they take their shipment to the Hutt the next week. He passes them on to a contact of his who is looking for a lost separatist ship in deep space. And that's where our campaign's got to. They're off, they're preparing for their mission, they're going to head out into deep space, looking for a lost separatist ship, hopefully which contains treasure, but they don't know. So I've hooked in the separatist background, I've hooked in the fact that they're scum and villainy. The only thing I've got to hook in the future is the fact that they want to join the rebellion. And I've got my campaign going. Now, a lot of that was done on the fly and not going by my rules or the instructions I handed down in previous videos, but I just wanted to go over it and give you a rough idea what I did on the fly to start up a new campaign. Now, because I didn't want this video just to be me whittering on once again how to start up a Star Wars campaign, because I've done that so much in the past, I reached out to Vincent over at the Evil DM YouTube channel and asked him if he wouldn't mind recording a segment about how he starts up a Star Wars campaign, because he's done lots of great Star Wars content over on his channel which I'll link below, but let's go over to him.
Hey folks, Evil DM here. I was asked by RPG Gamer Freddy to record a video on Star Wars preparation and what you need to do before jumping into a game. As the GM, I know when I run a game, the first thing I have to wonder to myself is, what era am I going to set this game into? Because you can do the prequels, or maybe the Sith Empire versus the Jedi Order. You can do the Clone Wars era, which is a fun era to play in, when the Jedi Order is actually going up and doing things as far as trying to restore peace, and they become lazy and complacent, so you have to do something like that. Then, of course, you have the era between when the rise of the Empire, after Episode 3 into 4, that whole gap that basically has all that room for you to explore, because there wasn't a lot of information, especially if you go by Legends as opposed to the Disney stuff. If you go by Legend stuff, which was canon but not anymore, you have a ton of room to play in there with the campaign, having your characters, the good guys, fighting against the Empire. If they're Jedi, they're going to be in hiding, things like that. It's a perfect for an adventure. I think it's very ripe for an adventure, that era. But there's also the later ones when you do episode after 6, 7, 8, 9, around there. If you're following the books, what Luke Skywalker went over, turned to the dark side, explored that part of his life, went a little nuts. Maybe you can explore that. You can explore some characters that have gone to the Jedi Academy, and we're getting tutelage under Luke. So there's so many different things that you can possibly do when you're running a Star Wars game, but you have to think, how do you want to handle it? Another thing to consider when running the game is, do you want any of your characters to be force sensitive? Well, that's a hard thing, because if you have one person, that person is going to dominate the entire game over the rest of the players, and most players are not going to think it's fun unless you kind of limit what the force, if they're force sensitive as opposed to being a full out flat Jedi or not. The other solution that we've run into is that you just basically make everybody force sensitive or force Jedi and allow them to have equal powers. No one should be above the rest of them, and then let people figure out their skills based on that. Once you get all that information down and figure out what area you're playing in, you should have a solid way to run your game. The problems that a lot of people run into is when they fit into certain roles in the game. And you have to remember that when players are making characters, they may settle into certain things like, I'm going to be the pilot, I'm going to be the talker or the face, or I'm going to do this or that. So once you figure those few things out, you should be able to run a successful game. Prepping for games is not that hard, because you can just basically get an idea written down real quick. And when I prep for games, I like to write down plot points, things I want to cover in a game, and allow. The style of my running a game is, I call myself a reactionary GM, or a reactionary DM, however you want to call it. Meaning I run adventures with plot points that I have written down, and I let the players drive the story, and I react based upon them and let them react upon what I do. I give them options. They pick the option they want, and they move forward from there. So there's no railroading in my games. There's all player driven, and that's basically how I run my games. Hopefully that's giving you some information. If you want more of my videos, I do a lot of AD&D 1E videos. I'll be doing my own Star Wars videos about D6 very shortly. Possibly some Star Trek videos. You can head over to youtube.com/c/theevildm. And you can visit my videos and check it out. And hopefully you will subscribe to my videos as well. And hopefully this has helped Freddie out as well. So keep it original, keep it old school, and good night, everybody.
Many thanks, Vincent, for doing that. Great stuff. Much appreciated. Now, I've linked his channel below, so I'd highly recommend you go and check it out. They do a particular series over there called Fall of the Order, which is their ongoing Star Wars D6 campaign. And I've been loving listening to it because it's given me great ideas for my game. You can only get a better Games Master by peeking over the shoulder of other Games Masters, and that's what Fall of the Order's been doing for me. It's been giving me fantastic ideas that I'm definitely taking on board. But that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, as always. Please like and subscribe if you like what I'm doing, but most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye.